So the first question says, find all solutions to the equation in the interval from 0 to 2 pi. So look at the equation, and it's always good to set the equation equal to 0 with common terms, but I have sine of 2x here and cosine of x, so I will go ahead and use the double angle identity of sine and substitute 2 sine of x and cosine of x equals to cosine of x. Now you can move cosine of x to the other side. So then I get one side equal to 0, and here I have 2 sine of x cosine of x minus cosine of x. And when you solve the equation, we always try to make it simple. So we will factor out the common term. Here we have cosine of x from both terms. So when I take out cosine of x, I'm left with 2 sine of x from here, and I'm left with just -1. And it still equals to 0. So when this factor equals to 0, the whole thing will become 0, or you can make that equal to 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a t-table and set cosine of x equal to 0 and 2 sine of x minus 1 equal to 0. So take inverse on both sides to undo cosine, because it's a function. You don't just divide by cosine. You have to undo the function. So now x becomes inverse cosine of 0. This means when will cosine become 0? So I always like to draw a unit circle. So cosine is x. So x, when does x become 0 from 0 to 2 pi? It is x equals to pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. Here, move 1 first. So it's 2 sine of x equals to 1 and divide by 2. So you get sine of x become 1 over 2. Again, you take inverse of sine, you call it arc sine, because we're solving for x, meaning put x by itself. So what is arc sine of 1/2, meaning when the sine become 1 over 2? Again, sine is the y, the smaller y. Here is y root 3 over 2. Here's 1 over 2, and this is root 2 over 2, right? So it's these two right here. So x equals to pi over 6 and 5 pi over 6. So your last step is put all your x's together from least to greatest. So it is pi over 6, then pi over 2, then 5 pi over 6, and 3 pi over 2 are your solutions. Okay. So here's the next question. 3. Yeah, because number 2 is the hardest one, so I'll show you that at the end of the video. So here I have 2 times cosine of 2x equals to -1. So for this one, of course you can use identity for cosine of 2x and substitute, or just solve the equation as input of 2x. But the thing is, now your interval for solution will be different, because when we were solving for x, it was from 0 to 2 pi. But now, if you're having your input solving the equation in terms of 2x, it will all double. You see how x doubled? That means 0 doubles, which is 0, and it doubles for 4x. And you will see why at the end when we solve our final solutions. So here you just treat it as just one single term in terms of 2x, so divide by 2 on both sides. I have cosine of 2x equals to -1 over 2. So then from here, I take arc cosine, inverse cosine on both sides. So I get what? Just 2x. Write it as 2x for now. We can just divide by 2 at the end. So what's arc cosine of -1 over 2? So 2x equals 2. So when does cosine become -1 over 2? Here and here. So this is 2 pi over 3. And here is 4 pi over 3. But remember, since it's 2x, the interval doubles. Because when we divide by 2 at the end, if you just have your solution from 0 to 2 pi, basically you only find a solution from 0 to pi. Again, because you have to divide by 2 at the end. So I'm going to go around one more time. So when you add 2 pi to 2 pi over 3, that's adding 6 pi over 3. So you get 8 pi over 3. And when you add 6 pi over 3 to 4 pi over 3 here, if you go around another 2 pi, it becomes 10 pi over 3. Then what do you do at the end? To solve for x, you divide by 2, meaning you divide by 2 to all 4 solutions. So then I get 2 pi over 3 is pi over 3. 4 pi over 2 is 2 pi, and you still have over 3. 8 divided by 2 is 4 pi over 3. And you have 5 pi over 3. See, if you did not find these two, you will have only these two answers, which will be just from 0 to pi. You want to have our solutions from 0 to 4 pi when x is 2x. Okay? So let's try another question. So here, kind of same thing. So divide by 2, divide by 2. I have sine of 2x equals to negative root 3 over 2. Take the inverse on both sides. So I get 2x equals to arc sine of negative root 3 over 2. So your 2x becomes the angles or radians when sine is root 3 over 2. So sine is y. It's a bigger values than 1 over 2's, right? Negative 1 over 2. So here I have 4 pi over 3. Here's 5 pi over 3. But again, it's 2x. So you have to find the value up to 4 pi instead of 2 pi. So from here, I'm going to just go around another 2 pi. So when you add 2 pi, that's 6 pi over 3 with common denominator of 3. So that's 10 pi over 3. And 6 pi over 3 added to 6 pi over 3 again is 11 pi over 3. So now what is your final step? We are not solving for 2x. We are looking for the x value. So we divide by 2, divide by 2, 2, 2, 2, because it was equal to 2x. So I get now 4 pi divided by 2 is 2 pi over 3. 5 pi over 3 divided by 2. 5 can be, when you divide by 2, you can write it as 2.5, but we usually don't write decimals in a fraction. So I'll write 5 pi over. It was already divided by 3, but now we are dividing in half again, so 6. So 10 pi over 2 is 5 pi over 3. 11 pi over 3 divided by 2 is again 11 pi over 6. So here's your 4 answers, not just 2. All right, here comes the, I'll say a level 5 question. Yeah, there's level from 0 to 5. I mean, this is maybe, yeah, level 4. Because it's not impossible to do it, but it's long. And you have to try multiple things. Why? So here I have cosine terms of 2x, and here I have 4x. So you want to have the common terms, meaning you have to have the same input to simplify. So I'm going to go ahead and use this as what? 2 times 2x. And I'll go ahead and use the double identity. And since I have only cosine on the other side, I'll go ahead and try this. If this one does not work, then you can try this one and that one. So I don't know which one will work, but I'm assuming this will be the easiest one because it doesn't have sine in the expression. So cosine of 2x equals to cosine 2, right? 2 cosine squared of u. Here my u is 2x minus 1. And then you set it equal to 0 again. So it's always easy to keep the highest power square positive. So I'm going to move cosine of 2x to the other side so I can keep the positive for the cosine squared of 2x. So here 0 equals to 2 cosine square of 2x, and then I'll put the cosine of 2x, the next highest power, and a constant at the end. So here, if you said a equals to cosine of 2x, you can rewrite this as 2 times a squared minus a minus 1. And here you're just factoring trinomial when a is not equal to 2. You should have your own method of doing it. There's so many different methods, but I love my method, and you can also look up one online. The easiest factoring method will be, what I do is look at the factor of 2, 1 and 2, and then I look at the factor of c, 1 and negative 1, but I don't know which one will be negative yet, so I'm going to keep them both positive. And I cross multiply them, and my goal is when I add the product of these two, I like to have them equal to negative 1. So that being said, the negative should go with negative 2 to make it negative. So that means this should have been negative. Then I'm done with my factoring. Here's 1x minus 1, 2x plus 1. I mean, for this case, it should be a's. Okay? So 0 equals to, here, x minus 1 or a minus 1, which will be cosine 2x minus 1. And 2a, 2 cosine of 2x plus 1. So from here, it's exact same thing. You just go ahead and find when this becomes 0 and that becomes 0. So it's like 2 questions in one. Cosine of 2x minus 1 becomes 0. 2 cosine of 2x plus 1 becoming 0. So again, what do? Move 1. So I get cosine of 2x equals to 1. So take inverse. So 2x equals to arc cosine of 1. So when does cosine become 1? Cosine is my x value, so here it is. And remember, it's 2x, meaning your interval doubles, because you have to divide by 2 at the end to go back to 0 to 2 pi. You have to find your x values or your radian from 0 to 4 pi. Please don't forget that this is the main thing. So now what do? So when looking for when cosine becomes 1, so it is 2x equals to 0, 2 pi. And it's actually excluding 4 pi, so you don't have to put 4 pi. So now you divide by 2, 2, x equals to 0 and pi. And here, move 1. So 2 cosine of 2x equals to negative 1. Divided by 2 to get rid of the coefficient of 2. Cosine of 2x equals to negative 1 over 2. Now take the inverse. So 2x becomes arc cosine of negative 1 over 2. So 2x equals to, when does cosine become negative 1 over 2? Here, x is negatives, right? Here. So that is, yeah, we get a lot of 2 pi over 3s today, right? And this is 4 pi over 3. And then you go another round. So add 2 pi. Or I'll just write it here. Add 2 pi, which is 6 pi over 3. So 8 pi over 3. From here, you add 2 pi from 4 pi over 3, which will be 10 pi over 3. That's not done, right? That's not it. You have to solve for x. That means you have to divide by 2 from all your answers. So I get x equals to 2 pi over 3 divided by 2 is pi over 3. 4 pi over 3 divided by 2 is 2 pi over 3. 8 pi over 3 divided by 2 is 4 pi over 3, half of it. Half of 10 pi is 5 pi over 3. So here are your 6 solutions altogether. You can write them from least to greatest.